Prabhupada came out to go from his quarters, which was up on the hill, down to the temple for greeting the deities in the morning. So there was supposed to be some kind of a kirtan to usher him down to the temple. Somehow or other, I had a mridanga in my hands, and I'm not a mridanga player either, really. I remember when I first joined, I would play this bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, flap, flap, bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, flap, flap. That was the first mridanga beat that I knew, and then there was bing, ka-ding, bong, bing, ka-ding, bong, bing, ka-ding, like that. Simple beat. So I was playing one of those beats, and they had me leading the kirtan. And I was just chanting the simple Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And I was walking right next to Srila Prabhupada. And as I was chanting away at the top of my lungs, trying to do the best I could, Srila Prabhupada just turns to me with a smile and kind of cocked his head back a little bit, looking at me with approval. And he said, Jai. It's the only word Prabhupada ever directly said to me. Yet, that one Jai stuck with me. It was a Jai, not just a Jai to me, but it was a Jai in relationship to my endeavor to do Sankirtan, to sing the holy name, Hare Krishna, for the rest of my life.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare
Aindra would always share personal sweetnesses with us that he didn't feel we could share with maybe others. For example, we're taking darshan of the deities, Radha Shyam Sundar, and I'm there, and then he would come up to me and say, Maharaj, you see this kamarband of Shyam Sundar? See how this knot was tied? And he'll point out some particular sweet detail of his dressing of Shyam Sundar in Vrindavan ISKCON. I'd say, see, you know what this is meaning? And I frankly, I didn't know that, I didn't notice it, or nor did I know that it had a meaning also. But he would say something about it. And what I remember about the whole experience was not so much the details of what he said, but just the tone of his voice at the time, and the bhav that was coming through his voice. It was so sweet and innocent, and it was almost like, and look at this, this, it wasn't like someone observes the deity. Sometimes someone observes the deities. Did you see the garland they're wearing? It was just comes some sweetness from his heart, because of course he dressed Shyam Sundar that day, Saturday, and we were there, and then he came, shared some of that sweetness that he felt by having that particular aspect of the darshan. Or do you see that flower tucked over Shyam's ear? That that we picked that from one vine down the street, and I was just thinking like this. So that's, I think of this because there's certain aspects of Aindra that everyone knows quite well, Archan and Kirtan and philosophy and personal bhajan, and his example in his preaching. These are, like you could say, divisions of his activities, externally observable, and we joined him in some of these things, and that's what I'm trying to recover one by one. And we would sometimes we came, of course, to Vrindavan in '87, and the first year or so we were living in the Gurukul with Radha Govinda and Bhuvaneshwar, the three of us. And then I went to Radha Damodar. So at that time in '87, we were frequenting Aindra's room quite a bit. And then at that time he was beginning to get his shalagram collection. It was going on whenever he had to go to get a visa renewed, he would go to Nepal. And sometimes he would go to Gandaki, or he would tell me, I remember the first time he went there and he came back and he said, it's terrible, they're selling these shalagrams and then the people smashed them on the road to get gold. So I went and I preached to them and I said, really, you should give me these shalagrams, I'll take them to Vrindavan and you'll benefit and everyone will benefit. And this way the store owners were giving him shilas. And then one day he actually went. I mean, I'm not very good for memory, so I'm just piecing whatever little impressions I can, because we're talking about 25 years ago. Many of the things I remember about Aindra were from 1990, 20 to 25 years ago. That's a long time. Because after 1990, I was pretty much out living in Vrindavan here and there. I didn't see him that much after 1990. So he went to the Gandaki, he came back with some shilas, and he got one shila, and he called me to his room. One shalagram shila, and he had some book about shalagram shilas, identifying their markings and whatnot. And he was so excited. He came in the room, Maharaj, you have to come down here, we have to see this new shilas. It's extraordinary. And then I went, and he had just come back from the Nepal Gandaki river. And he said, look, you see this shila? And I said, yeah, it's really beautiful and black. And he turned over and said, see this? And I said, oh yeah, what is that? It looks like a footprint or something. And it was a footprint of a calf. And he said so. And he said, do you know what this means? And I said, not really, I don't know so much about these things. He said, look here, it says, anyone who has this, it's very, very rare to even have such a shila with one, have such one. And to do puja, anyone that does puja of this shila, it's guaranteed that. So he showed and he said, see this? It's guaranteed, the person goes back to Goloka Vrindavan, not to Vaikuntha. And I said, that sounds great, Aindra. He said, yeah, it's some one way or another, we got to get all the mercy. He often said this, we have to get all the mercy we can get. And I said, yeah, well, I'm sure the name will take you. If not, you have a lot of insurance policies here to go back to Goloka. And then we were joking, and I said, well, listen, if you go back before I do, it was just a joke. I said, if you go back before I do, then you leave me the shila, because I don't have much other hope. I mean, you have the name and your bhajan. I'm kind of like destitute in all these departments, but maybe... So yeah, sure, like this. And that was like a joking moment of 25 years ago, when he very first got this. And then I didn't ever think about that exchange again. And so and I was surprised that Aindra, I had heard from others around the time he left to the Nitya Leela of Radhe Shyam, that some of his intimate devotees and friends, they said that, Aindra often, time to time, would mention about this shila, make sure Maharaj gets this, as if he knew that if he's saying that means I'm going to be here and he's not going to be here or something, if he's saying that. Because if I'm going to die first, he wouldn't say make sure he gets it, And I was surprised, because when we met, I never said, hey, what about my shila? I never brought it up again for 24 years. And then now somehow Aindra, he knows I'm a basket case or in bad shape, so then his spiritual will for his brother is that because often in Indian families, one brother helps the other brother. He lends him money for business, or he even gets 2 jobs and takes a loan out to help his brother. They're very loving and helpful. So Aindra left this shila for us to have some hope about our future by worshipping this Shamsundar and maybe get that blessing. So I was taken aback, because generally people think that Aindra is a little hard or maybe even nasty to some extent. But actually, it's quite to the contrary. He was a paragon of truth and an essence seeker, prema varukshu. And the essence of Gaudiya Siddhanta is the prem seva of Radharani and Krishna, Nikunjas of Vrindavan. And he came to Vrindavan for that, to attain that seva. We came to Vrindavan for that also. So naturally we gravitated together.
What I really wanted to do is I wanted to highlight certain images of Aindra that I have, like the most vivid images of Aindra, and maybe some of them be relevant, and then discuss, especially what I wanted to discuss is I wanted to discuss his empowered side, what was coming through him and how it affected people. So I think my first image of Aindra, I remember back to New York, and I really don't want to make it too vivid because then it would say who it was, but I saw, he was very determined to have this truck, and it was very, very elaborate. It was an ice cream truck, but when the doors opened up, they were very elaborate on the side, and inside was a temple, and then he hoisted a kind of like a top on the top of it. So it was very elaborate. And, you just park it on the street, and you have a temple right on the street. And I know that he did meet some resistance in the things that he was doing, and which is one of the reasons he has an image, perhaps, of ISKCON leadership being disempowering, so to speak. But I do remember his determination at that time. And then I remember when he showed up in Vrindavan after being in New York. Had a cursory relationship with him. And I remember such a vivid image that it was on the veranda of the Gurukul building, and he was showing me a design of a bus that he planned to take around India doing Harinam Sankirtan. And the image I had of that bus to this day, it almost had wings. It was somehow Garuda or something, and I couldn't imagine how that bus was going to get through the streets of India. But he always thought very, very big, and he thought about spreading the holy name. But somehow or other that didn't pan out, and then there was some inspiration to do the 24-hour kirtan. I remember a Kapoor having a dream. I don't know if it was the accountant or OBL Kapoor, but I remember some type of dream where Prabhupada wanted. I don't know if that came back to Aindra, but he started the 24-hour kirtan. Then the next vivid image I have of Aindra is, I think people today don't understand what ISKCON was. That's over 24 years ago. How do I put this in a simple way? What people know today, when they first walk in the door, people didn't know in the movement, even if they were very, very senior and at the top. Practically speaking, no one even knew what Manjari was. Even the term was not even there. So Aindra, though, was really intense about understanding his eternal relationship with Krishna. And I have an image. I remember that he came into my room and he started to pour his heart out of how much he wanted to understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. He wanted to know who he was. And, when he came into his room with such a strong desire, I didn't really have a frame of reference for what he was talking about. So I remember it was so intense, and I suggested to him either it was premature. I may even have used the term sahajya, be careful. And I remember the next day he was giving class, and the whole class, he was intensely looking at me and no one else and talking about small-minded people. So, but, I mean, and the understanding is, what is lobha? The essence of Krishna consciousness is what? Sri Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavatobhi. That mood of your eternal relationship with Krishna. The term Krishna consciousness comes from that verse from Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, Sri Krishna Bhakti Rasa. Bhavatomati, to have the mindset of that emotion or mood, Sri Krishna Bhakti Rasa, of your flavor of relationship with Krishna. And Rupa Goswami says that Krishna consciousness means you should have a low mind to get that. So now looking back, I see that that's what that was. He actually had lobha. He had an intense desire. So, yeah, that was kind of, looking back on that was kind of revelatory. And then, of course, we know to get that, when you really have a strong desire, and this is a strong desire that I want to know my relationship with Krishna, he would do these incredible austerities. In Kartik, he would eat khichdi off the floor. You can, you go down, it's on the floor. You can only take as many bites as they're the day of the moon. So I guess the new moon you fast. And inevitably, and he would do this for 4 months, and increase his chanting, and inevitably, it wasn't healthy for him. And he got very, very ill, inevitably. Sometimes at the end of the vrata, he'd have to be carried out or something like that. I saw that. And I remember even one time he even thought he had cancer. There was some kind of infection. But, he would not leave Vrindavan. And I remember when he was telling me that, that's really, a depth of determination and understanding.
He was very sweet like a flower, and very fragrant and tender and soft like a flower to those who knew him. And sometimes, although mostly it was sweet, often with us we saw the hard side, the thunderbolt side. And we have numerous philosophical discussions about the tattva. And I really admired Aindra's his conviction to follow what he believed in, even if the Shastras externally didn't seem to agree with what he said. Because sometimes I would say, it says here, and Sandarbhas like this and this and that, and the acharyas say this, and he would often reply to me, he said, I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say. He said, I'm realizing it like this, and I have Prabhupada and my realizations in Sham, and that's good enough for me. And so I felt that actually this is ultimately the essence of everything we do, is not so much external philosophy and pedantry and gyan, but it's actually ultimately bhav, and the inner aspect of one's realization about Radha and Krishna and where he fits into their eternal service. And I feel Aindra was more acting on a platform realization than just philosophical understanding, and this was very impressive and attractive to me, that this was someone that did more than give lip service to the philosophy. Rather, he studied it deeply and was an extremely fine dissector of the philosophy, and entered deeply into it to try to be an exemplar and a follower of the ultimate philosophy, which is the prayojana, to realize one's Siddhadeya and engage in the Nitya Seva of Radha and Sham and Vrindavan. And that he kept to himself, and he used to like to share with me and others, I also believe so, but he would sometimes share some things with us. And he generally would ask us in the early days when he was trying to understand the tattva, especially in Angamantri tattva, which is a rather secret tattva, not very much written about, and for various reasons, so you couldn't find everything so much in black and white. And there was one particular book that was very helpful for these understandings, and Aindra was so determined to get the truth of this subject of Radharani's younger sister and her character and her contribution and her position in the Leela and her seva, the relationship to Lalita and Rupa and others, that he had this particular book translated, at least I know of, three different times by three different like scholar type people that know the Sanskrit and Bengali language, so that he could get the clearest understanding in English that he could, because he and I, of course, we don't know these languages. So that determination to find the truth, and even spend money to pay for the translators, and not settle for half truth or partial understanding, and well, let's translate it again and again and get what we can understand. That's a very admirable quality, that determination to find the essence of the essence. And definitely he did, and he practiced what he realized. But in those early days, trying to understand the identity of Ananga Manjari, is she Saki, is she Nayaka, is she Manjari, is she Manjari and Saki, is she a dual identity? We would often go together, and no one else was there. He didn't like to take others on these visits that I know of at that time. So we often went together to Manasi Ganga or to Keshigat or to Radhakund or Manasi Ganga, Govinda Kund, in this area, maybe once to Barsana, I forget. But to meet different advanced devotees, and he always had some questions about this tattva and the bhajan. He would ask these very elevated senior Gaudiya Vaishnavas through translators oftentimes, and then he would try to deepen his understanding. And he was collecting notes all the time and recording sometimes. And he was not sitting back and Haribol, and everything's fine and everything will just follow the trees. He was seriously endeavoring to find the truth, to understand the path of bhajan, to practice it. And as everyone knows, it was all centered around the Harinam Sankirtan, which he went deep into and made that was his preaching, and the substratum of his personal bhajan was lots of nam. And he would sometimes, I remember he would say to me when I would come from Radhakund to visit him in his room and come to Vrindavan, and he would always say, the way he would speak to me, he always had a kind of a friendly, sweet, but condescending way of speaking to me, which I kind of appreciated, because everyone else usually has a more, let's say, artificially humble approach, due to some notion that one should respect a member of the sannyas order, or whatever they're operating under. But when it's brothers, then it's like, whether one brother's a prime minister, another brother's a policeman or a car salesman, it doesn't really matter, because they're both brothers, so they can just really rip into each other without any formality. So he would say like this, he'd say, Maharaj! That voice is still echoing in my brain. I'd walk in, he says, Maharaj, so you're chanting some Shuddhanam, or what are you doing out there? Sleeping? You're chanting Shuddhanam, or you're sleeping in Radhakund? I said, mostly I'm sleeping over there. I want someone else to chant for me. But that he would open with that, Maharaj. And then whatever it happened to be, and...
Aindra's realizations were very, very deep. In one sense, subjective. It was his own heart. It couldn't always be understood externally. He was definitely Rasika, really deeply interested in understanding his relationship with Radha and Krishna. But, most people that get into that, it carries them away from, Prabhupada, or carries them away from Prabhupada's institution. But you have to understand that whatever Aindra did was so couched in service. In other words, it was such a beautiful balance and that's what real philosophical understanding means, is Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan, I don't want to go into the term deeply, but basically it means a metaphysical understanding, but a balanced understanding. And you have to put together a lot of things to have a balanced understanding. So he had a deep understanding of Radha Krishna and understanding how to develop a relationship with Raganuga Bhakti, but it was so balanced and couched in Guru Nishta, a foundation of service, and that was his 24-hour kirtan. And I think in terms of a contribution to the preaching mission, so many people, especially when they come to Vrindavan, are attracted to Vrindavan, whether it's sincere or insincere, there's some attraction for maybe some higher subjects. And, I think more than anybody else, Aindra kept those people with that interest within Prabhupada's mission, because he had interest for those subjects, but so vividly demonstrated that the foundation of attaining those type of realizations is dedication to the mission of your spiritual master. And in terms of the contribution of his service, I remember talking with Burijan Prabhu. Krishna Balar Mandir has gone through so many changes, and even I heard that Prabhupada said the management is cursed. The temple was opened on Ram Navami. In India, they won't open any temple on Ram Navami because Ram's life was just full of so much suffering and trouble. So it seems that the temple is destined to. But what is that temple? And that temple is two things, really. The core of that that makes it the most beautiful temple, I think. Mayapur is very beautiful, Panchatattva, it's so wonderful. But there's something about that Krishna Balaram Mandir that's just so attractive. And what is it? It's the deities and it's Ayendra's Kirtan. I remember Borijan told me this. Krishna Balaram Mandir means the deities and Ayendra's Kirtan. And that creates a community. There's actually a community here of Vaishnavas. And it's based on that. And the preaching is absolutely profound. I know in Ayendra's style of kirtans, many people maybe didn't understand it fully. Certainly I can't say, but I understood one thing. His kirtan, of course, he had internal realizations of what kirtan meant. But again, that balance, it was also to share the holy name. And that style of kirtan he had, which was so forceful, it was made, I'll say this, it was made to get the Punjabis to dance. It was made to get the thousands of people here to dance. And it was it had to, and even today, I was in the temple, and I saw, 40 Western people from Italy coming, and I was looking in my mind, how are these people going to react? Because obviously, they had no spiritual interest in coming to, they were tourists. They weren't spiritual seekers, they were middle-class people, the kind of people that fold their hands and kind of like look around and have a camera in their hands to make sure that no one knows that they're actually participating in this cult or something like that. And what I saw that was so beautiful, is, it's the legacy of Aindra, is that the people, that some of them were chanting.
He would hear some rumor about us that there's quite a few of those over the years, and like the ocean sees the coming and going of many waves. Sometimes, but the ocean is still there. Hurricanes come and go, tidal waves come and go, typhoons, cyclones, tufans, tsunami or whatever it is, tsunami. And but when the water goes up and down and makes a lot of noise and knocks a lot of things down, But then, since all said and done, the waves are gone, the typhoon's gone, and the ocean's still there. So I sometimes think that my Guru Maharaj gave me this name to indicate something about that, because the name means great treasure, great ocean. So Aindra would catch whiff of these various rumors that are going on since time immemorial about us. He said, Maharaj, we heard like this, like that. I said, Acha, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one. Is this going on? I said, I don't know. I didn't know. Maybe you can tell me. So this is the thing about our meeting and discussing these points of the philosophy, and he would ask me sometimes to gently nudge me to improve the quality of my chanting and the quantity of my Nam Bhajan, because I was often preoccupied with doing my own research, meeting sadhus and producing books for the benefit of others based on my inspiration from Prabhupada, as he also has done. And so the Nam was not so much emphasized. Now I'm more trying to be serious in Nam Bhajan. So deities, and then even we would go to other places, we'd have programs sometimes here and there in Vrindavan. There was one in a few years ago, which we haven't been together in a long time. It was somewhere in Vrindavan, someone had a house opening, and we went there, and then I was taking darshan of those deities in this particular complex over there. And he came up next to me, and it was just the same old thing that we would often do. He would come up and say, and I think I saw some picture of it also. Someone snapped a picture because he has a lot of people photographing him. And so he's pointing to me like this, like he often did. He said, see that the way because these are just somebody else's deities, Radha and Krishna. He said, you see this thing like this or that, and we were laughing. I said, oh, here we go, Aindra, you're telling me something. You found something special. Yeah. See, look, it's like this. I said, and that picture, someone caught that picture. Both laughing. Not so much what we were looking at, but sharing that reminiscent of what we often did and what Shamsundar. He was pointing out something. So, in an indirect way, he was actually teaching me about Sringhar. I had previously done Sringhar 1977-81 in Berkeley, Radha Krishna deities, Radha Gokulananda. So I know something, a little bit, but nothing like him. And so he was trying to point out the sweetnesses and personal. I mean, Aindra would address the deities with the bhav that Radharani is dressing Sham through my hands and heart. And he would pray like that Radharani's heart, and he teaches others like this. Radharani's heart would mix with his, and he would dress Sham in such a way that Radharani would be completely attracted and satisfied. And if you satisfy Krishna and Radha, then everyone feels satisfied, and that's what happened. Is he dressed in such a way that whenever anyone took darshan from around the world, they would be satisfied to the extent that they want to make practically during Aindra's time, every deity in the world of Radha and Krishna, they tried to make them look like Radha Shamsundar. I've seen so many pictures. I said, what are you trying to do? I mean, you have Radha Sham is Radha Sham, but they would dress in the same way and put the beni in the front, and whatever Aindra was doing in Vrindavan, that became this model, role model, and standard for deity worship all over the world. Without his even preaching about it or talking about it, it did its own talking. The dressing did its own talking. So this is a remarkable thing, and I really think that Aindra was a trendsetter, and it's a quite amazing thing. I'll take another thing here about Japamala. Now, in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, up until Aindra came on the scene, nobody in this whole Gaudiya Sampradaya ever made a pair of japa beads that were shaped like mridangas. There's a museum in Varahanagar. Varahanagar, outside of Calcutta, is the Leela Stali of Bhagavatacharya, who It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it was and also Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Lord Chaitanya visited it there when he went to Puri, near the Ganga. It's Varahanagar, about 2.5 hours northwest of Calcutta. And there, they have a museum there, and it's interesting because some people in ISKCON did something like that over the previous contemporary times. It's a very old museum. It's a Gaudiya Vaishnava museum. They have They have some original paintings of Srivas, Narottam, and Shamananda with the long hair. They have the original painting on the wall. Many things, artifacts there. So they have dust from all holy places in little jars, and tells you the name Seva Kunj Nidhivan. I say, oh look. And they have water from holy places. Then they have Karang, the wooden shoes and water pots of Rasikananda, Shamananda, Jiva Goswami, many. And they have the japa beads on display. And they're all goli, they're all round. And in Hari Bhakti Vilas, another Puran, it says that mala should be shaped, it's right in Hari Bhakti Vilas, it's in English, should be shaped like a cow's tail or a snake. Cow's tail starts off small and becomes bushy at the end, chamar. So one big bead goes to one small bead. And then the snake's head is big in the front, and it comes to a little tail. So big bead goes to small bead. This is the standard. And then Aindra, and because I asked him, did you see this in Shastra anywhere? And he said, I just read it somewhere. And then then people would come to me and say, Aindra says we should have, I didn't really like this much. People would go to Aindra, and he would say, Mridanga beads are more powerful, this, that, you get better chanting. So then they say, okay, and it must work, you know what you're talking. Then they would come to me and say, what do you think of this Mridanga beads? I say, hey, wait a minute, man, I know where you're coming from. If you're with Aindra and he's your guru, you do that, But I said, I can't find any support for it, but that's just a bhav vichar, his understanding, or he found some shastra, I don't know. Don't get me in the middle of this thing if you want to. Just the main thing is chat. Get some beads, handicraft beads and red wooden beads or something, and just chant. What do you get into details for? Just stop arguing and then get down on the chanting. Chant on bread balls. When you're in Russian prison, you get some dried wheat bread and roll in the balls and make beads out of which they did, and they chanted to japa on the bread balls. Salted bread or something like that. So then, I've been coming, so then all of a sudden, right around the time Aindra was making popular, all the malas, guys selling japa mala, they had so many goliwalas around us, they'd have 2 or 3, I'd say, look at this, Aindra's taking over the place, supply and demand, And I went to, because I thought this is so amazing, this guy is such a powerful personality. He can change the course of Gaudiya history almost. And I went down to the Tulsiwalas and Loy Bazaris getting some Tulsi beads, and there was a little bit, because people would keep coming up to me asking about this Mridanga thing, time to time. So I asked these 2 Tulsiwalas, they're like 10th generation Tulsi manufacturers, the grandfather. I said, in the history of your shop, have you ever made Mridanga? He said, no, this is Aindra's thing, I said, you make them, and some of them don't. Rajendra doesn't make them. He won't make them. They say this is, something different. But here, these guys know where the money is, because Aindra has a big following, so everybody's got these. And because it doesn't matter. Prabhupada, he gave out some pine wood beads with red paint on it to Satsarup in 1966. There was no Tulsi, no neem, no beam, seam, cream, anything. They went down to some arts and crafts store. They got some wooden pine wood beads painted red and strung them together, and they were like just 6 feet long, and they're about as big as jawbreakers. And Prabhupada chanted on them, and then Satsarup and Kirtananda and Chutananda, they established a whole movement and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world with some pine tree Tulsi beads, big, fat, round, guys. And they're all the same size, no big and no small. And Prabhupada didn't say, hey man, where's your Tulsi beads? So it's like, Guru Maharaj is like, that was, just get the job done. So Aindra, for him everything's Harinam Sankirtan. And the thing is, it's so deep, because everything he saw, one is, jap is kirtan is jap. And this is, the shape of these beads indicates a philosophy, that you can't have kirtan with good japa. If your japa isn't any good, your kirtan won't be any good. So then the japa beads are just getting you geared up for the Sankirtan, because you already got them in shape like Mridanga. I mean, you can write a whole thesis about the value of it. And I think that's where he was operating from, not some artistic beads, but the symbolism of what it meant and what he wanted to drive home. Okay, this mala is nice, but that's not the real thing that's going to save the world. You're quietly doing manasik japa in your corner in New York and Vrindavan. But do you see those? Hey, look, 108. You got 108 reminders. You got 108 reminders here, because there's 108 mridangas. They're saying, get off your butt and take a mridanga and go out in the street and glorify the holy name and help others. But chant sufficient nam bhajan on your beads so you get shuddhanam when you go out there. You can give something powerful and valuable. Anyway, see how it goes. I mean, so that's one idea that he created, like a whole new trend in japa. Just the shape of the beads, what to speak of interest in chanting and emphasis on shuddhanam and going deeper. And now we'll take music. Aindra, sometimes he would come to Radhakund and we would go together to Shamsundar Mandir and other temples in the early days when he was collecting ragas. And we went once to Varsana, to Banu Kund. There was one Baba living there. He would have all-night kirtans. I forget his name. But he was a very good singer, very beautiful ragas, and Aindra would come there, and he would come and get me and take me there. He would record the ragas and late at night, and then he would collect these. And I know because I was with him. This is a fact. I went 3 or 4 times with him doing this work because he was a perfectionist and a virtuoso in music and pure music. Sankirtan and glorification of Radha and Krishna. So he wanted to do it right and do it with the tradition. What I found is that the ragas that he would take and hear from these senior Vaishnavas, because he himself, Aindra, was very expert in music, he would take those ragas and he would add some, and I would hear him sing those same ragas that we recorded together, and I would recognize the background of that raga, or tune, let's say, but then he would add this embellishment and create a whole new wave of that raga, which was very, very beautiful and very, very original. And that was basically his watchword. It's the Aindra original. He was an original, as they say in American slang, the real McCoy.
Aindra was, people know him as, I don't know the word, I don't want to say sentimental, but a person from the heart with real emotion that can come out. And I've those eyebrows that kind of, they kind of have like a V. It's like a determination. If he was upset with you, it was kind of like a magnifying glass. It really, appears. So and his emotion in chanting and everything else. But again, the balance. He was really a deep philosopher, and I don't think many people know this. But I know it because when several papers I wrote, one was Srila Bhakti Siddhanta and Raganuga Sadhana. And it was a very deep research that went into this. I wanted to show, because some of the criticism that comes from traditions here, Radhakund, etc., is that they're the traditionalists, that, the Ekadas Bab and these things that, and we've kind of changed it. And I wanted to show, and I'm pretty convinced that it's a solid presentation, that, the tradition of the 6 Goswamis, Jiva Goswami, how Bhakti Siddhanta is linked up. And in a balanced way, how he was cautious about higher subjects, but at the same time gave us access to them when appropriately approached. Very complex subject matter. And I remember I came and showed the paper to Aindra, and I was really astonished of the subtlety of his understanding. I mean, I sometimes get some kudos, some praise, because I did the Waves of Devotion, which is a commentary on Nectar of Devotion, which is a commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So I have some understanding of these subjects. But, really penetrating and subtlety. and not just subtlety speculation, but subtlety to actually get to the core of the issues. I don't right now remember the specific ones. I just have the image of sitting in his room and going over paragraph by paragraph and seeing him in several places just tweak it with a depth of understanding, which shows that, he was in his room. If you think one thing about Aindra, although he's such a known personality, basically he was only public a couple of hours a day. Basically. He came to the kirtan, right? Before that his door was shut. Then you saw him in the kirtan, then he went to his room. If you wanted to come to his room and you had some close relationship to him especially, there may be a few other hours. So what was the rest of the 20 hours? It was chanting and it was deep thinking. And I think because of that depth of understanding and depth of thinking, where others may have not understood the philosophy deep enough to understand that we're getting into higher subjects to understand Prabhupada's connection to it.
So Aindra took the harmonium and he said, listen, this is a nice, this will enhance the street Sankirtan, attract more people and enthuse the Sankirtan party more, but it's too big and bulky. You have so many scales here. You don't need so many scales. Just find the scale that works with your voice. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, whatever. I don't know so much music. So then he made like a chopped Harley. You take a motorcycle. It's called a chopper. You chop it up and just get the ends. Chop all the bumpers and everything in place, and you just get the motor. So he had like a chopped harmonium. And it was lightweight and it was loud because triple reeds or whatever, I don't know, whatever he had. Usually get 2 reeds, and he said, give me triple reeds. I mean, he did all kinds, always something different to make it better. He took the wheel and he made it better. Like they say, you can't improve the wheel. Well, Aindra did. I mean, he took the wheel and made it go spin faster. And this cute little harmonium he made, it looked good too. I mean, he had a little breastplate here and there, and nice polish. It was not only a functional, practical instrument to be able to conveniently and lightweightly take harmonium on Sankirtan, but it also looked attractive to the eye and of the onlooker. So now that was a one-of-a-kind piece, an original design piece, a harmonium. I went there to the guy in the Mathura when he got the first one made. And then now it's like they're all over the place. As like the japa beads, everywhere I see people have these harmoniums. In fact, you can buy them from the Harinam party, I think so, maybe. And there again, it's a wonderful addition, because otherwise he saw that people were going wah, 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 some kind of thing like this. What's it called? Accordion. And it's like wah, wah. It sounds like, I don't know what it sounds like. And it's just like, with or without the holy name, it doesn't work. Either way, it's like, just get out of here. And people try to get into that thing somehow or other. And why? Take this kind of Aindra, chopped harmony, and get with it. So there we have the music scene. How he, and then his attraction, because if someone's so hard as a thunderbolt and so fierce and fiery eyes, and I remember sometimes we were arguing about philosophy, he would say something, hot and loud, and I would say, because I'm not that hot by nature, and it's my constitution, but he's a little different type. So he would start getting a little loud, and I said, Aindra, and I would say, Aindra, there's only 2 of us in his room, about 11 o'clock at night. I said, we're in the Gurukul, it's like kind of cool down, the kids are sleeping or someone. He said, I don't get that when I say that, he get even more tyrannical and stuff. And he'd say, I don't give a damn, this, that, and take some, book, maybe dictionary, hopefully. And he'd take it, just throw it somewhere on the floor for emphasis, and say, if I'm going to speak, I'd let them all this, that. So I said, okay, here we go, let's go. We just go off onto this thing. I'd be like speaking a little bit soft and carefully, and he was just yelling on for about 20 minutes. I was just waiting for the door to beat down. Shut up, you guys. Everyone was so in Tamagun, they didn't even know what we were talking about. 11 o'clock at night. And I always remember that we'd be sitting down having philosophy, talking of points of philosophy and Prayojan Tattva and whatnot. And then when he'd get excited, he would stand up. Because he got too fired. He'd stand up and he'd start like pacing a little bit, and then he started going like this, like that, and his eyes would get so red. I said, Aindra, and I used to joke with him. I said, Aindra, you look like one of the demons right out of the Krishna book. I mean, we're brothers, we can say this. I mean, you're most all of you are Shiksha disciples. He's your guru and this and that. And so there's friendship and some awe and reverence. But he and I, there was no holds barred. I just said, he got into these hot-headed things. His eyes started shooting red sparks and stuff. And I said, Aindra, you look like one of the demons in that Krishna book. And I got out the Krishna book. And Pralambasura had copper red hair. I said, look, you got copper red hair. And he had fiery red eyes. I said, look, you got fiery red eyes. And his skin was all red. I said, your skin's all red. And he said, that's right, I'm a demon. What are you going to do about it? I laughed some more. I said, all right, then if you're a real demon, then eat me. And he said, I'm trying to eat. If I could, I would, And then like that, because, I would like egg him on into higher states of, excitement. And these are the moments I can't forget. And I don't think, only a few, maybe Ram Roy Prabhu and others, whose intimates got to see the really fiery side of Aindra, like fireball side of Aindra. And I wasn't hardly anywhere with him as much as you all. But it was sweet, and it was like, it reminded me, Aindra very much reminded me of the Chaitanya Charitamrita when they're talking about some of the topics and this love of Radha and Krishna that Krishna's Kaviraji says that their love affairs, Radha and Krishna, it's like hot sugar cane juice, garam ganaras. It's hot, boiling hot sugar cane juice. It's too hot to drink and too sweet to resist. So to me, this summarizes Aindra. He's too hot to take and too sweet to resist. And he, of course, was a revolutionary in the truest sense of revolutionaries, but a revolutionary not propelled by egoistic self-aggrandizement, that he wanted to catapult himself into stardom or become a charismatic leader due to his revolutionary stance and view in opposition to the mainstream. But it was all stemming from his bleeding heart, that he didn't care about numbers and thousands numbers of books and temples and dollars and cents and Lakshmi points and all these things that we often get absorbed in, counting and calculating in our own Sankhyaite way. He was seeing that the hearts of the devotees in the movement are dry, and they're shriveling up, and they're thirsty, and they're sincere hearts, and they're loving hearts and wanting to love Krishna and Radha, but not knowing where to go. And so he was rather revolting against the lassitude and laziness to go into that reservoir of nectar that everyone was needing to get. And this is another point that he and I would often discuss, because I was also a revolutionary in college, burned my draft card and all these kind of things, marched on Washington in the 70s, anti-war, part of the SDS, and organizer, so Students for Democratic Society. So we believed in Reformation and trying to make a better world for the people, young folks especially. So Aindra wanted to make a better world, you can say, for the devotees in ISKCON, a world based on love. Loving relationships with one another, and really finding out and uncovering the love for Radha and Krishna everyone is hankering for in their heart. And we have the way to do that. Very much we have the way to do that. And Gaudiya Vaishnavism is all about finding the path of love within you and living it and experiencing it. It's an experiential religion. Pratyaksha vangamam dharmyam. Pratyaksha. It's manifest, self-manifest to each individual that surrenders and goes deep enough. He'll come up with the treasures that one finds when he dives deep into the ocean. At least he gets pearls, and that's the cheapest of the treasures, and they're quite valuable. If you're more fortunate, you can find rubies, sapphires, diamonds, everything in the ocean. They wash up on the beach in Africa. African devotees, they say there's whole portions of beach in West Africa, all controlled by the government. Certain nakshatras and jewels wash up even today on the beach from the ocean, because the ocean produces jewels. So this was his revolutionary spirit, that he said, what, year after year, decade after decade, decade after decade, ISKCON was getting more decadent and decadent. I said decades means a portion of 10 years in English, that means decade. Century is 100 years in a decade. And decadent means decaying or dissolving or weak or diseased. So it's just going on, same old, same old. And he said, stop it, let's come on, revolution. That's like the people in a country, they can't put up anymore with a dictator. They can't tolerate his atrocities and insensitivity, so they overthrow him. So he was trying to have an overthrow, and he and I were discussing this, and I was saying, I'm right there with you, so that's why I'm deeply thinking about what are the most important books that will help the devotees cultivate the rag marg. What are the most important books in our sampradaya for this cultivation of Raganuga Bhakti? And we would discuss how to promote Raganuga Bhakti. This is our discussion. Besides just chanting Harinama, we were deeply thinking, revolutionaries, they plan for the revolution how to take over. So you need to disseminate knowledge. You need to disseminate weapons. You need to disseminate inspiration. So Aindra was disseminating weapons, all kinds of firepower and bombs by Shuddhanam. And we were trying to distribute some knowledge of this Ragmarg, Ragmayi Bhakti through these books, because these are all Rasa Shastras. And they all have a particular, it's part of the plan, the takeover, the conquest of the heart. So each one of the books we produce are actually essential books to develop the bhav and understanding of Ragmarg. Aindra prized these books very much. Ananda Vrindavan Champu, Krishna Kumudi, Bhavanasara Sangra, commentaries of Vishwanath and 10th Canto, very, very priceless gems necessary for the whole development. So we did our part, and Aindra did his part, and he left, and wouldn't mind joining him. But maybe we can produce some more inspiration in the same line.
Aindra was a controversial person in ways. Some people were into Aindra, some people were not. Of course, Mao Zedong, I think there's a quote from Mao Zedong. He said, "What do you think about a person who everyone hates? Oh, I want nothing to do with that person. What do you think about a person that everyone likes? Oh, I want nothing to do with that person. What do you think about a person that some people like and some, oh, that person I want?" Because it indicates sometimes that, of course, Dira Dira Jana Priyo Piyakaro, Sanatana Goswami, dear to everyone. But needless to say, he had a certain integrity. He spoke his mind. He was at the edges of aspects of Krishna consciousness that sometimes were controversial, whether they should be prominent or expressed, etc. Just one second. Anyway, needless to say, he was controversial in ways. But this is the point that I really felt strongly with him, and I think it came out even more prominently. And that's that there's really two sides to a Vaishnava. One is his nature, his dealings, etc. And the other is the inspired side, the tattva, the Guru tattva, the Krishna that's coming through the person. And I saw this in a very, very extraordinary way with Aindra. You may not like him. Some people may not didn't like him. Maybe some thought he was eccentric. Some people thought, well, this wasn't. Maybe he was too critical of the the GBC or something that came out in his book. There may have been, sides of him that maybe people didn't like or not like. But I think no one can deny that the inspiration and potency of Balaram came through him, which means the potency to attract people to Krishna and to get them to surrender to Krishna and get them attached to the holy name. I mean, when it all, like when the dust settles, they say, what's left? What's left is thousands of people inspired. And I see this with so many people of other gurus, that have this incredible relationship with Aindra, and they may come from different spiritual masters with different views, and they themselves may not necessarily agree with Aindra's worldview on every particular subject, but it's so inconsequential to what came to them through Aindra, which is a spirit of devotion and bhakti that brought people closer to the lotus feet of Krishna and gave them such intense attraction to the holy name of Krishna. So I think that was one of the most extraordinary things about Aindra, that he was able to inspire such a broad range of people who felt Krishna's potency through him. And I don't think, myself included, many of us realized to the extent that was done until after he left. And you saw so many people come forward whose lives were changed. And I think this is the real test and potency of a spiritual personality, that people take up his mood of bhakti. That's the potency of a spiritual personality, that people take up his mood of bhakti. And really, in one sense, that's what the real sense of shishya means, one who takes the mood. So I think there were certain personalities that could do this very prominently in our movement. One I saw was Jayananda. Jayananda had such a seva bhav. I was fortunate to have met him. And then you see people who had association with Jayananda intimately have that same seva bhav. For example, Godbrother Sridhar Swami. You can see the mood of seva bhav. Another one was, who used to be Jagannath's Pujari, Krita Karma, who used to be the vice president here. Incredible seva bhav. And then there was Vishnu Jan, and Vishnu Jan had this spontaneous attraction for kirtan. So who were the people that took up the bhav of Vishnu Jan as close associates? Indradyumna Swami, Dina Bandhu, Aindra. They took his bhav, they were influenced. So now I think it's Aindra, and see all the people that take his bhav. But again, the unique aspect of him taking his bhav, it's a very, very inner thing. It's a very inner thing. It's a certain attraction to the holy name. And it's a very, very wonderful thing that's so... And another thing, a great personality, one thing about a great personality is that they have a legacy that's carried on. And so many people were crushed when Aindra left. I mean, I saw that. I was in America. I was woken up in the middle of the night, and so many people were crushed. And part of it, it was a separation of Aindra. The second part was their life is finished. It's going to change because their life was Vrindavan. And what's the soul of the Krishna Balaram Mandir? It's that 24-hour kirtan. Without that, there's no life. People were thinking, even why would I ever even go to Vrindavan again? Would I ever return? Without that kirtan, what do you do here? What's the life? And to come here now, and I've been here since October, and to see the richness of the kirtan, and to actually see the Punjabis and the Indians that are visiting dancing ecstatically, and to see so many people who've been touched by that mood of kirtan, and to actually present it properly, coming back to do kirtan, and see that the kirtan culture has continued, and that's the potency. The potency is that the kirtans are amazing in the Krishna Balaram Mandir now. I think Aindra had some favor to me because I would sometimes come to the kirtan, and I was a godbrother, I was a sannyasi. I once brought Tamal Krishna Maharaj there. I know he was so happy that a godbrother, came to the kirtans and like that. But I was busy. I came occasionally. Now I'm coming twice a day. I'm coming at 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. I'm coming to 5. The kirtans are just that good in the temple. So that's his legacy, that it's carried on. Akinchana Krishna told me that Aindra had told him that he was close with Vishnu John, and when Vishnu John left, Aindra thought it would never be the same. And then Aindra said it was never the same. But then I thought, but then there was Aindra. Then there was Aindra. It was never the same. It's not Vishnu. But then the Paramparaka. And then I thought, too, when Aindra leaves, it'll never be the same. But, those kirtans in the temple, and young men, they hopefully have many, many more years, the legacy is carried on. And I think that's the test of a powerful spiritual personality. The inner side, the inspired side. And I think, although someone may not like Aindra here, someone may like him here, someone may put him as the way up here, someone may question, the way he dressed. Someone may, question if he got into the higher subjects to this, or why was he angry, or if he criticized in this way. But I think an objective person has to be unified on the point that something extremely extraordinary and inspired was coming through him to change so many people's lives in the mood of Prabhupada.
Another point we would often discuss, how we were both fully convinced that Prabhupada didn't cheat us, and he never did and never will, and he gave us everything. And it's just we had to figure out where the Father buried the treasures. It's a big estate, and the Father buried the treasures, so we have to find out where they are. Not to say, my father was a billionaire and he died and he didn't leave any money for anybody. But in the old days, people buried big pots of gold full of jewels and things like that. Even today, sometimes they dig up property around here. Recently, just north of Govardhan, they were digging a foundation for a house about 6 months ago, and they found 14 pots of gold. It's something like $24 million worth of gold. They're all coins, 500-year-old coins that were stashed there by some king that conquered some Muslim guy. They're all gold coins with Akbar's picture on them. 14 gold pots. Each one they had to use a crane to pick them up. Big urns. They're inside the ground. Mayapati came down by helicopter to claim it. The chief minister. First the DM took them, and then there's a whole luffer, and then she came and said, no, they're mine. $24 million. So it's an analogy that similarly Prabhupada, he has pots of gold and treasures that he planted in this movement in his books. We don't need to run anywhere or go anywhere. And Aindra and I were convinced of that. That by chanting Shuddhanam and seriously meditating, doing bhajan and reading and praying to Prabhupada and the Parampara, that all perfection and realization of our Sarup and how to engage in a bhajan will come to us. And along with good association also, and advice and guidance from higher advanced sadhus also. And so he lived for that and believed in that, and he wrote a book based on those realizations, very wonderful book. And we're following the same line of thought and action. And by that we can see that Aindra also acted as an acharya to represent the inner side of Prabhupada and the deeper side of Prabhupada, although sometimes I had to cry with Aindra. We would cry together when the news would come in where somebody was saying Aindra's not a Prabhupada man, or Aindra's not following Prabhupada. People would sometimes cast these phrases, his way and my way also. And that really hurt Aindra. He said, these people, they don't know what they're talking about. We're following the inner Prabhupada, the real Prabhupada. The father has different levels of his personality, and you only come to understand as you grow up the different levels of your father's personality. So Aindra was very much a true follower of Prabhupada because he stayed in Prabhupada's temples in his whole life. He never blooped and ran off and hang out with some Babaji or this or that. From the beginning to the end of his whole life, in Krishna Bhakt consciousness and bhajan, it was Prabhupada all the way. It always was, it always is, and it always will be. And we're the same way. And but Prabhupada is a deep person. They say he's a Vaikuntha man. Prabhupada is a Vaikuntha man. We don't accept that. We say he's a Sevakunj man. Prabhupada is a Sevakunj, Mandri from Sevakunj, not even a Vaikuntha man. His guru was Nayanamani Mandri, and Prabhupada has his Mandri name. And this is Prabhupada that Aindra understood and was trying to follow. The Prabhupada lives eternally in Sevakunj. Prabhupada himself says, my eternal home is Sevakunj. So what does that mean? He's living in Sevakunj in the Vaikuntha Sarup as a Vaikuntha man? Because in Sevakunj there's only one man, and that's Leela Purushottam Shamsundar. And everybody else is female. And even the greatest demigods, if they want to get into Sevakunj, they have to become females. Gopishwar Mahadev. They can't say, look, I'm Prabhupada's disciple, I'm coming to see the Vaikuntha man. They'll say, there's no Vaikuntha man over here. There's Goloka Vrindavan Shamsundar, and there's all the gopis. You want to see Nayanamani Mandri? You want to see Kamala Mandri? Guna Mandri? You want to see Prabhupada in his Mandri form? No, I'm looking for a Vaikuntha man. Well, then you better go down some other petal of the lotus flower to the Vaikuntha region, a little lower than this Goloka. So Prabhupada is definitely a Goloka, a gopi from Goloka, Goloka Gopi, Golok Gopi, Golok Gopi. And he wants us all to join him in the spiritual world and assist him in his eternal service to Radha Shyam and Sevakunj and Nidhivan and Rasastali and Nitya Vrindavan and the Nitya Nikunjas on the bank of the Yamuna. Aindra's gone there to serve Prabhupada in his Mandri Sarup. And he's inviting everyone. Actually, if you hear Aindra's Kirtan, there's two things going on in Aindra's Kirtan. One is a lamentation of a soul crying for his beloved, and the other, he's inviting everyone to enter the rasa dance. These are the two points that I understand from Aindra's Kirtan. Because every one of his Kirtans is full of vilap. Vilap means hankering. There's no joyful Kirtans. And I realized myself that in different stages of a person's bhajan, as he comes to the Brahmabhuta platform, he comes to the level of Nishta and Ruchi, he feels joyful and happy at the level of Ruchi. Because the level of Ruchi, what is Ruchi? Ruchi is Nadanana Janana Sundaram, Kavidamba Jagatisha Kame, Mama Janmani Janmani Shvela. So this is Ruchi. When one has Ruchi, he feels happy. Brahmabhuta Prasanatma. He's friendly to everyone, he feels inner joy and happiness. And when he chants these things happily, his tunes are happy and joyful, because it's coming from a joyful heart. Now he goes beyond Ruchi, he goes to a Sakti. When it comes to Asakti and Bhava, then he starts feeling intense separation. You're there and I'm here. Then he starts crying. And that joy becomes replaced by a joy, but a joy and a happiness is not just sheer joy and happiness, and the Ananda Ruchi in bhajan, but that joy and Ananda is covered by an intense lalasa. Lalasa, hankering for perfection, hankering, lamenting, crying, and lamentation, and that's the next level of kirtan. So Aindra was on this level, crying and lamentation. This is like you say bhav bhajan. Lalasamay, it's all, if you listen, it's all like this. Hare Krishna, it's like crying. And then that was appealing to everybody because everyone was tired of la-di-da, ha-ha, Hare Krishna Kirtan. They wanted to go deeper, everyone wanted to cry. So Aindra tried to get the world to cry for Krishna. Everyone was imitating, and they're imitating his tunes. That's nice, but hopefully in those tunes they'll catch up his actual bhav. Because he wasn't just, looked up in a book on Vilap Rag and sang Vilap Rag. It was, I understand myself in my own bhajan that this is the way things go in the progress. If one is genuinely chanting from the development of his heart, not just trying to listen to some singer singing ragas. Okay, let me imitate that raga. He's actually singing from his purified realizations. What is his bhav? What bhav is flowing? What is the predominant bhav flowing in his heart? The predominant level of bhakti and realization, and that comes out in his kirtan expression. And as I understand my limited perception, as one himself advances deeper in bhajan and comes to the level of asakti and bhav, and joyful kirtans may be there, but mostly it'd be like you listen to all Aindra's tapes. There's not too many joyful ones.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.